cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. JLee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, JLee.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is episode number 236 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, August the 10th, 2024. My name is JLee, and I would like to thank everybody who tuned in last week for our episode with Jordan Riker. Also, reminder, tomorrow night, the Fanatics Collect weekly hockey show is back with Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show. Next weekend, guys, no episodes. I will be at Fanatics Fest in New York City, but I do plan to capture some content while I am there. So keep an eye on my Instagram feed. Guys, Filth Bomb Breaks offers live case and box breaks, and they do so with responsibility and integrity. If you enjoy box breaks and are looking for a company to break with, check out Filth Bomb streaming on Fanatics Live on 4 channels, 7 days a week. And if you are looking to add a grail to your collection, make sure you check out Fund Your Cards, the hobby's leading consolidator. They will help you finance the purchase with your own cards. Visit fundyourcards.com and check out the new Fund Your Cards show here on Sports Cards Live. Episode 1 streamed this past Thursday. It was a lot of fun. Please check it out, guys. Mint Inc. is a leading hobby brand in Canada. They offer a full range of services from in-person shopping and live event experiences at their 2 Toronto stores to online shopping with worldwide shipping, live shopping, auctions, breaks, grading, and more. Their primary focus is to bring the ultimate hobby experience to collectors in Canada. And on every episode of Sports Cards Live through the end of 2024, they will be giving away a $50 gift card that is valid on their online store, mintink.ca. And we will be doing that later tonight. I'd like to thank Danny Black of Hobby News Daily for having me on the Hobby Spotlight podcast, and to Zach Nygett of Collector Creative for having me on the Hobby Hustle podcast that will drop in the next week or so. Links to both of their channels are in the video description below. And guys, this show is also available on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow and subscribe for free, and please leave a rating or review on your podcast platform. And as always, thank you to all of our loyal viewers and listeners for your ongoing support. If you are not yet subscribed to the pod, to the YouTube channel, please take a moment and do so. As always, tonight, your comments and your questions are in play. So let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby at 4 years old. When his dad was showing him his hockey cards, he grabbed the box, ran to his room with them, and the rest was history. He opened Wayne's Sports Cards and Collectibles in 1991 in Edmonton, across from the famous West Edmonton Mall, and has been in the same shopping center ever since. His favorite athletes of all time are Mario Lemieux and Shane Doan, and his favorite teams of all time are the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Edmonton Oilers. Originally and currently hailing out of Edmonton, Alberta, let's bring him out, Wayne Wagner. Welcome to Sports Cards Live, and how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome, Wayne. It's a pleasure to have you. Seriously, I feel like I've known you really since I moved out west, which is 22 years ago, and made a trip to West Edmonton Mall, dropped into Wayne's, and I had heard just from some people in the local scene about Wayne's sports cards. I do feel like this is a special episode for me, Wayne. So I'm thrilled to have you, and thanks for taking the time.
Oh, I'm honored you invited me, honestly, and we have known each other for quite some time. I mean, I think we run into each other at every single show. I know you've been by the shop, and as you said, I mean, I've been doing this since '91, and I know you've been in the shop many times. So I really look forward to doing the show tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. I mean, your store is legendary. And listen, I might make you blush a little bit, but I remember talking to an owner here at a shop here in Calgary who was maybe just at the time, maybe a year or two in. And I remember talking to him, and, we became buddies, and he kind of said to me that, he was really trying to emulate what you were doing. Wayne Wagner up at Wayne's in Edmonton, you were sort of the model that he was trying to emulate. When you hear that, and this is already 20 years ago, when you hear that, Wayne, I know you're a little blushy, but really, I got to say kudos. But what does that make you feel?
It's an honor. It really is. And we did hear that. I remember when Darren opened up, and Darren's a great guy. I've known Darren forever. And I remember when we first heard that he opened up, we had a couple of customers that went down there to make the visit and went down and saw his shop. And I remember a customer coming back going, he kind of pointed around to our store. And I said, what? And I said, like a big store? And he goes, no, exactly what you've done here. And I said, that's great. I said, if he finds that that's what works to have a sports card shop or to open something brand new and have it work, I thought it was great. I mean, it was really an honor to have him do that. And I know, like I said, I've known Darren forever.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said, we run into each other at the shows, whether it's the Expo, which is now out in Edmonton, its predecessor, the Summit show, any show, bigger show in Calgary. I've seen you various times over the years. And but it's just whenever I see you at the Expo recently, you're always, everything is so professional. Like you come in, you have a cash register there, like you do everything properly. Is there any specific reason why you approach the business so professionally? I mean, it sounds like a silly question, but I want to hear what you have to say.
And that's a great question, Jeremy. I've just always believed that if you're going to do something right, do it right. People see what you do and they want to be a part of it. In my opinion, they want to be a part of it if you're doing something correct. So we've always wanted to have it where people look at what we do and say, wow, that's the way you run a sports card shop, or that's the way you run a business. So yeah, I mean, when we do a show, we bring our point of sale system out there so everything can be scanned. And I'll be honest with you, part of the reason is with our inventory system, when we're selling products at shows, if we don't take it out of inventory with our point of sale system at the time of purchase, we have to document all this. So when we get back to the shop, you've got to take everything off. So it's better that you just have everything there, have it all done properly. And to me, it's all about presentation. It's something I grew up with. I've seen people in action that do the right thing and have a great setup and have a professional look to what they do. And I wanted to emulate that. So whenever we go to a show, it's the same thing. We bring our back display, we have racking, everything's clear and precise, just to make it so when the customer walks up to what we do, they can see the product, they can visualize the product, the pricing is right there, everything is right in front of them. So it minimizes the questions they have to ask when they walk up to our booth.
And I suppose it also gives them, if they haven't been into your store, it gives them a feel of just how you do run your store and what they could expect as far as the experience in the store itself. Let's talk about the store. I want to get into your head, Wayne. When you first opened the store, what were you doing before you opened the store? And what was the whole decision process like to decide to open up an LCS right near West Edmonton Mall?
So great question. And, again, this has a little bit of a story behind it. So bear with me with this story. But I'd always known as a kid that I kind of wanted to run my own business. Did I have an idea it was going to be sports cards? Absolutely not. But I just thought, you know what, it's so cool to run your own business, to make your own calls, to do whatever you want to do. That comes with catches, but it was something I'd always planned. So even as a kid, I used to steal the Monopoly money out of my parents' Monopoly game, and I'd play store, and I'd have stuff in my bedroom, and I'd make my parents come up, use Monopoly money, and buy stuff out of my bedroom. So it's stuff like that. I went to NAIT, and I took 3 years of NAIT. And I'll never forget, and this is what kind of spurred me on to do it. So I got together with a couple of buddies because one of the courses we had to do was called business. And it was basically simply, you had to build a business from ground up. And it wasn't just saying, this is what I'm doing, here's my platform, this is what's happening. You had to be precise and give details and print up everything, traffic count and all that kind of stuff. So basically you showed up for day one and you showed up for the final day presenting your paper. So the three of us got together and we kind of didn't know what to do. One guy presented a bar idea and I thought, I don't know, like, guys, I know sports cards. Why don't we do a sports and memorabilia shop? They loved the idea. They kind of were in it. One of the guys I'd known from playing hockey with. So we handed in our paper at the end of the day, and I remember getting it back, and on the paper, we got a really good mark, and I can't remember what it was, 90, 92 or something like that. I forget the mark, and it said very well developed, very well thought out, precise. The paper read, we were docked marks because the instructor felt that an idea like this would never pan out. So we were docked marks because he thought it wouldn't happen. So when I left Nate, I said, you know what? This is something I maybe not want to prove, maybe a chip on my shoulder. But I thought, you know what? Let's give it a try. I was only 21 years old. And I thought, let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. Worst scenarios, it doesn't work, we move on. Lose a couple of years of our life, take the chance, and move on with something else. But we tried it. There was some lean times. I think anybody who knows the 90s, there was a lot of lean times to those early 90s. Eating craft dinner and having water for meals. Trying to bear through everything. But we persevered, and it's been a fun journey.
Can you clarify what is NATE? I know what it is, but maybe the audience doesn't.
Sure. Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. So it's like university. It's just a different form of post-secondary education.
And I mean, the fact that it worked and you're still going here 35 or so years later, have you ever run into that instructor and kind of said, hey, guess what I'm doing?
So again, another funny part of that story was one of the instructors that taught us accounting in NATE. He actually found me. He found out I opened a shop, and he came by, and he was a cool dude. He used to come out with us during off classes, and he'd come play football with us in the yard and everything else. It was kind of a lot of fun. And he came in, and I told him the story. And his comment was, he said, if you're not going to tell him, I'll go back and tell him. And I'm like, no, look, I'm not that guy that's going to rub it in somebody's face. He could say it's luck. He could say it was just whatever happened. But I'm just not that type of guy. So to this day, I have not informed him that 35 years later, I still have the show.
That's funny. That's funny for sure. So I had a comment actually that came in here, and I thought it was really here. Terry Fortune, he says hello. Looking forward to this show. I've been going to Wayne's for about 25 years. He says Wayne and Nikki are the best, by far the best shop and service. Nikki, your wife, who lovely, met her several times. Tell us a little bit about the family sort of vibe over at Wayne Sports Cards.
And that's what we tried to create, Jeremy, is exactly that. So it really is just friends and family that work for the shop. We have not hired outside of family. So it started out with myself just working in the shop. As we got busier, Nikki, my wife, had to get involved. My parents got involved. My brother got involved. My sister got involved. And she's a very integral part of the shop right now, as everybody knows. We've got some very close family friends, Clarence and Daryl, who are two great friends. I couldn't ask for better friends. They pretty much help in and pitch around Daryl in the off season when he's not golfing. Clarence is now one of our employees. But we tried to really create that family atmosphere so people felt really comfortable coming in the shop. And thank you, Terry, for the kind words. I've known Terry, again, 25 years plus, and fantastic dude. Absolutely fantastic dude.
Yeah, a great hobbyist for sure. Let's say hello to some more people in the chat. Orlando is here from A Collector's Dream YouTube channel. Guys, make sure you check out Orlando's YouTube channel. As I just learned this morning, he's going to be a new regular rotating host on Hobby Hotline on Saturday mornings. Congratulations on that, Orlando. Jeff McMahon, good to see you as always. Chris C. Edmonton boy 77 says, let's go, Wayne's best in the business. Stukes is here. What's going on, Stukes? Jacob Dahl, always good to see you. Kung Fury says, Wayne's Sports Cards, yay. Very nice. Willie T, solid guest. Thank you, Willie T. Canada Blues, looking forward to some Canada content. CC has a key question for you, Wayne, that I asked you myself the other day. He says, first, good evening, but Wayne, Lemieux is awesome, but how can someone who is named Wayne and lives in Edmonton not name Wayne Gretzky as their favorite player? I think this is a legitimate question.
So, I mean, I am a Gretzky fan. There's no question. It's hard not to be, no different than Connor McDavid. I'm a huge Connor McDavid fan as well. I was a little bitter. I was one of those young rebels that when things didn't go the way I wanted them to go or expect them to go, I got a little bitter. And I got to admit, in '87, when Gretzky exited Edmonton, or Peter Pocklington got rid of Gretzky, it was really tough. And I became a huge Lemieux fan. I think it was, I don't know how many months, 3 or 4 months later, Pittsburgh came to town, and I was just struggling with the team. I was having trouble with the Oilers, obviously despised Gretzky going to LA. Lemieux came to town and he lit us up. I think the score was like 8-3 or 8-5 or something like that. Lemieux had 5 points, and I'm like, there's the dude I'm cheering for now. As much as I like Gretzky, had a tough time in Edmonton, but there's your story of why it's hard. hard for me to discuss the Gretzky years because it was really tough seeing him going to LA.
And it is 35 years later. How do you feel now, now that you are that much older and wiser? How do you feel now looking back upon Gretzky leaving Edmonton, the impact it had on your city, your fan base, and the hobby as well in Edmonton?
It amplified the hobby. Let's face it, no matter how you slice that, it changed the game. Gretzky going to LA brought it to the limelight. Going to LA, he started to become more noticed. Edmonton was not necessarily a hotspot for hockey. So going there, he became the focal point of the NHL in LA. And I think it changed the game. I'm going to say it probably changed hockey cards because people in the US probably paid a little bit more attention to to Wayne Gretzky being an LA King rather than an Edmonton Oiler. So I think it did wonders. Looking back at it, did I enjoy it happening? Absolutely not. But I think it was very beneficial to both the card market and the NHL and probably changed both for forever.
I'm curious your perspective on if you were to compare the impact that Gretzky had on the Edmonton Oilers and Edmonton when he was there versus Connor McDavid here, again, 25, 30 years later. What similarities do you see? What are the differences? And who's the better player, Wayne? Who's the better player?
Oh, hot seat. Gretzky's Gretzky. And that debate is going to go on forever. Who's the best player to ever play the game, depending on what generation you sit in. Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Bobby Hull, I hear brought up. There's so many names, Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin. Everybody's bringing up these names. If Ovechkin passes Gretzky's record, is he the best player in the game or in the world? I mean, it's really hard to say. Everybody's going to have their own perspective. Gretzky's Gretzky. Some of the things that he did in the game are they're surreal. So by far, Gretzky to me is probably the best ambassador, best player that ever happened to the game of hockey. Connor McDavid, I think what makes him so exceptional and so huge in the game today is what he's able to do with the talent level that's out there in today's game. So Gretzky did it when there were still guys smoking in the dressing room, probably drinking in the dressing room between periods. Connor McDavid is doing this. His God-given talent is being elevated above all these players that a fourth-line guy could have probably been a first-line guy back in the day because of how fit they are and how into the game they are and the way they keep their bodies and how good they shape they are. So I think that's what makes Connor McDavid so impressive today is he's just that much better than even the guys that are in as good a shape as he is. But just his talent just stands out far and above. So comparison, I don't know if I'd want to put one above the other. I think to alleviate myself of any headaches and conversations in the next few days at the shop, they're both equal. How's that?
That's fair. That's fair. I understand, especially with that reasoning. Now, here's another sort of tough situation or scenario to consider. But I'm curious. Times are different now, and it's so much more of a business now than it was in the 80s. And maybe when McNall lured Gretzky away from Pocklington and the Oilers, that was something that it caught. I was in Winnipeg. I did not like the Oilers. I was a Jets fan. You guys always beat us. Yet I had tears when Gretzky got traded away from Edmonton as a 17-year-old or whatever I was back in the late 80s there. Is there any concern amongst you and your customers now that, either Connor McDavid doesn't play out his whole career in Edmonton or his line mate, Leon Draisaitl, doesn't re-sign and stick around? How do you feel about those two players and their impending longevity with the Oilers?
Yeah, and I think it's a concern for any team. I don't think watching what happened with Gretzky, I don't think any player is safe. All it's going to take is somebody money hungry as an owner that would rather have the money in his pocket. Now that goes a little long in the tooth in today's day because obviously the fans have something to say about it in terms of putting their butts in the seats. But Gretzky was traded, plain and simple. It happened. Connor McDavid could easily be traded. There's positive talk around the city of Edmonton. There's been a number of reports from different sources that Draisaitl is on the verge of signing a new 8-year deal. And that 8-year deal carries a $13 or $13.5 million salary per season. If he signs, these guys are best buddies. And they talk in the off season, they hang out together. They're already practicing, from what I understand, back in Edmonton here, are getting back in shape. Draisaitl is not signing if he doesn't know that Connor McDavid is upping his contract in the next couple of years. So there's a lot of optimism, but there was concern. I will admit that in the last couple of years, seeing the way things were going and the Oilers kind of spinning their wheels and not getting to the big game, there was concern that both of them were going to say, you know what, this isn't just going to happen here. Let's just move on and go someplace else. But times have changed. The Oilers are better. They proved it last year going to Game 7. And that's coming through a lot of adversity. I mean, let's face it, a 2-9-1 start. Who would have thunk that at the end of the day, the Oilers are going to be in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals? Oh, yeah. So, they packed that, whatever it was, 18, 20 game schedule in of just win after win. So they just did so much to get back in there. They've proven themselves as a good team. And I honestly believe that is in itself what's going to keep both Draisaitl and McDavid here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Okay, I have another question for you here. We live about 3 hours apart, door to door, city to city. I'm in Calgary, you're in Edmonton. Probably, a top 3 rivalry in the NHL are our two teams. You mentioned Darren from Maple Leaf Sports earlier here in Calgary, the LCS I was referring to earlier. When I go into his store, he's got a banner across the top of his wall that says, "You are in oil country." And he has a store in Calgary amongst Flames fans, which I respect him for doing that. I think it's good that he's, true to his roots. But my question for you, Wayne, really is, because of the rivalry, and there's a rivalry not just between the teams, but between the fans as well. Do you get a lot of Flames fans coming in? Because we have a lot of Edmontonians living down in Calgary. You have a lot of Calgarians living up in Edmonton. Do you have a lot of Flames fans coming into the store and looking for Flames cards the same way that we have Oiler fans looking for Oilers cards down in Calgary?
Yes. And I think that branches out to all the teams in the NHL now. With back in the day, and I'm going to go back into the heydays of when Edmonton and Calgary really had the rivalry. Those were absolutely unbelievable times watching, Tim Hunter and Dave Semenko go at it, and Doug Gilmour added to it, and Lanny McDonald and your Gretzkys and Andersons and Coffeys and Currys, and I can go on and on. It was a great rivalry. So going back then, it was tough cheering for certain teams because obviously the only games you got was your local games. You got to watch the Edmonton Oilers. In Calgary, you got to watch the Calgary Flames, and you didn't really get that much outside besides watching the Toronto Maple Leafs on CBC or the Montreal Canadiens on CBC. But you really couldn't watch much. Now with the NHL channel, all the different apps you have to watch all the NHL games, there's so many more fans in the different cities. And I think we see that more and more where people are coming in. Just today, had a young fellow in, couldn't have been over more than 8 or 9 years old, asking for Vegas cards. Loves Vegas, wanted to buy a bunch of Vegas cards. So we do see that quite a bit. I will admit, though, if I was a Calgary fan and I was in Edmonton like I am, I would not be having a Calgary Flames logo in my store. So good on Darren for following his roots and believing in the Oilers and putting that up in the shop.
Yeah, he must feel pretty safe down here in Calgary. I got to say one thing about all this, though, is that right now, the Oilers, it's not even a rivalry right now. The Oilers are a Stanley Cup contender, and the Calgary Flames are in deep rebuild mode. So I was hoping for the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup this past season because, not because I'm an Oiler fan, I'm not, but I'm a hobby fan, and I thought it would have been good for the hobby if they would have won. I think it's still good. That playoff experience should not go to waste. And they were so close, a couple players away, maybe one. They've addressed a lot of that in the offseason. So I'm excited. Are you excited for the next few years with the Oilers? Does it make you feel excited about the Edmonton Oilers as well as your business?
Absolutely. Again, knowing that potentially both Draisaitl and McDavid will be here for 8 years, because I assume that if Draisaitl, and the rumors are out there that he signs 8 years, McDavid will sign for maybe it's only 6 because he's got 2 more years left on his. Let's say it's 8. We've got another 8 years of those two guys together, the dynamic duo, 2 of the best players in the game. It brings a lot of hope to the team. And they did a great job in the offseason, re-signing guys that I think are crucial absolutely crucial parts of this team. Adam Henrique, love the guy. And I was actually just talking today. Jason Stradwick was in the shop, and we were yapping away about it. And he is a huge supporter of Adam Henrique, and we were yapping about him. And he basically just said that he's just a great guy. And I think that it really shows, like his play on the ice and the way he carries himself in his interviews. You can tell he's a great guy. But I think that he's a crucial factor on the team. I don't think we saw half of what we're going to see from Henrique in the next few years. So signings like that. Zach Hyman in play for a few more years. Stuart Skinner, who, and I'm one of the, I got to admit, I didn't think he had it. I was a little concerned with our goaltending, but, with the exit of Jack Campbell, he's really taken on the reins, thrust into that position. So I think they did a great job. And yeah, to answer the question, I'm very excited. If we can get Draisaitl and McDavid signed, it's a bright future for the Edmonton Oilers for the next 5 or 6 years for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was a little bit concerned about Skinner, but he certainly proved that he can do it. So big kudos to him and the team. I want to ask you now about the Connor Bedard effect on the hobby and on the business at Wayne's Sports Cards and Collectibles. Even is this the biggest sort of? Are we seeing more new collectors or even people who only show up once every 10 years? Is this that thing right now? Are you seeing a lot? Because Wayne, I remember even just not as a shop owner, but friends would reach when Connor McDavid came into the league, like, hey, where do I get a McDavid card? Now I get calls from those same people I haven't heard from in 10 years about cards. Where do I get a Bedard rookie card from? Are you noticing that impact too? And how has that been for the hobby?
Huge. There's no other way to put it. And it is probably the biggest we've ever seen. Obviously being in business for 35 years, I've seen all the pushes. In 1990, 91, the big push there with all, the brand new cards and your Lindros rookies and everything else. Saw the major push with Crosby and Ovechkin, and that was crazy, to have a product like the Cup come in at, I can't remember, release price was like $400 a tin. And I'm just shaking my head going, this is insane. But that was just absolutely nuts. Then we saw Connor McDavid in 15-16, and I thought that was crazy. This was by far. Now, we had a bigger lineup at the door for 15-16 than we did with Bedard, because that was Connor McDavid. I'll never forget that day. We basically there was 4 TV crews, 2 radio stations. They were all in the shop watching this line of people come in our store, buying these boxes and these cases. But I think Bedard, he really went over the top with what happened in the store for sales and everything else. And I think what happened there was, anybody who missed 05-06 or anybody who missed 15-16 or any of the other guys that fell in between, your Matthews or your Stamkos or any of these other guys that came up, anybody who missed that was determined not to miss Bedard. That was the plain and simple of it. So anybody that wanted to be a part of it. And, obviously with COVID, that changed things. We brought new collectors into the market. We brought new investors into the market. So adding all that together, people that didn't want to miss out, brand new collectors, investors, by far, this was the biggest push we've ever seen for a hockey rookie in I believe in hockey history. Hockey card history.
Awesome. Yeah. And Upper Deck, being the exclusive licensee of hockey cards, is delivering. Let me rephrase. Are they delivering enough Bedard variety thus far in the current hockey card calendar for your customers and what you would assume is the whole hobby, the whole hockey card hobby?
I believe so. Yeah. Again, they've been through this. They know what it takes. A lot of the guys have been in the industry for quite some time. Your Mike Phillips and all these guys that have been with Upper Deck for a long time. The builders, Billy, Grant, Sandground, all these guys, they've been through this war before, so they know what it's all about. They've seen the 05-06, they've seen the 15-16. I think they did a very good job of prepping themselves for kind of what was going to happen or what was going to go on with this this series of hockey, or the year of hockey. So yeah, I will say they've done an admirable job of it. And there's been their detractors, saying, well, how come Bedard was not in Series 1 as a young gun? Why did they push him to Series 2? It's a whole point for discussion. I don't know if you've had anybody on discussing that, whether it's Grant or Billy, on how that transpired or what happened. Jeremy. But there was a lot that went behind that whole thought process. That it wasn't just, hey, let's do this, because there was a lot of thought that went into that process.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let's go to some more comments here. Skeppy, good evening. Welcome to the show. Mark Santucci is here. As always, good to see you. And Dylan Rantucci. We got the Tucci brothers. We got Santucci and Rantucci here in the house. Dylan's looking forward to the show from Ryan and Ryan, and it's Ryan and Dylan. I think they're maybe coming into the shop every so often. Wayne. Brett S., good evening to you. Kung Fury says, Wayne, Ty Duncan is the best rep you've got. I love his energy and positivity. Shout out to the best breaker. I assume Ty Duncan is someone with you?
He is. And this is where I'll take a second to do some bragging. I personally believe we have the best breaker in the hobby. He does the energy he brings. He tires me out just watching him. But he brings a lot of energy, a lot of knowledge. And just a fantastic. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to combine forces with him. He was out there. Things weren't happening with the group that he was with, and we kind of had a late night talk. I was actually on a golf trip in Saskatchewan, and he sent me a message going, "I need some uncly advice." And I said, "Sure, I'm on the course right now. Can we talk tonight?" And I think we chatted for about an hour and a half, from like 11 o'clock until 12:30 in the morning. And as I said, very happy that he's a part of Wayne Sports Cards and our breaker.
Awesome. Mookie Chilson says, leave it to the hockey guys to let the McDavid Gretzky debate end in a tie. That's a good point. Well, it's the hockey guys, but it's also somebody who doesn't want to have to deal with the grief for the next couple of weeks in his store. So I get that. It was very strategic by Wayne. Fellow Five-Ball, I will not be going to the Burbank show, unfortunately. Hopefully next time. Professor, good evening to you. Doghouse Hockey is here. Good evening, Doghouse Hockey. And CC says, Wayne, your backdrop is amazing. Is this part of your shop or part of your man cave at home?
Part of the man cave. This is, I think everybody does. Everybody's got their stories of how they put their collection together, their man caves. This is that piece by piece thing that you have to pick and choose. Let's all face it. We'd need 100,000 square foot areas if we were all to pick up and buy every single thing we wanted or saw that we wanted to purchase. So just little bit by little bit, I kind of picked up little things, and you kind of put things together. So thank you for the comment, and I do enjoy my man cave, that's for sure.
And I also noted it's a cool factor before we even went live. Good call out there, CC. JT91 says the Panthers lost the Cup final last year, went back and won it the next year. There's no reason the Oilers can't do the same. And you think about that, Wayne, the Oilers did that in the early 80s. They went up against Mike Bossy and the New York Islanders once or twice in a row, and then they came back and won 4 of the next 5 Stanley Cups. So I think the Oilers have a good shot in the very near future. Jerry Hotch, good evening to you and the Currency Project. Good to see. I believe that's going to be Abdul, not Julian, but hello to Abdul and or Julian. Good to see you. Edmonton boy wants to know, is Wayne going to show some of his epic hockey cards in the collection tonight? I think I might have asked you to have a couple of your personal collection cards, so maybe we will see them a little bit later. We are going to do the vintage spotlight segment with Leighton Sheldon soon. He's running a bit behind tonight, so he'll be with us shortly. But I wanted to ask you this now, Wayne. You mentioned a few of the guys at Upper Deck. How, as an LCS owner in Canada, and I'm going to say it even if you don't like it, one of, if not the most respected up here in Canada by the overall community and fellow LCS owners, just from just the feeling I get from talking to people. Do you deal with Upper Deck? Do you work with Upper Deck? Do you consult for Upper Deck? I know you do autograph signings with athletes for them. Can you speak a little bit about your relationship with Upper Deck and the extent to which you might help them out here and there, I guess?
Absolutely. And I think I'm okay saying some of this. I did talk to them before I came on live here, Jeremy. They've kind of leaned on me a little bit for a lot of the autographs. When they have a difficult time, nobody likes sticker autographs. I think they hear it all along, and nobody likes it. Nobody enjoys it. They don't like it. And I'm sure they've echoed it on some of your other shows, where it costs them extra money rather than the player just signing the card and sending the card back and them inserting the packs. when it doesn't happen, they've got to take extra measures to get a new label printed up to say, this is your card, get the decoys done up to put these stickers on the decoys, get them to the printers to get these cards into the packaging. So it's all extra cost they incur when these players don't get their cards back. So they've leaned on me in the last, I'm going to say 20 years. When players don't get their cards back, and if they're local to Edmonton or players passing through, to meet with these athletes to get these cards signed. So yeah, I've got a pretty very enjoyable and great relationship with Upper Deck. Where I'll sit down with Billy or Grant and they'll run by the ideas of some of the card things they're doing or the things they're changing in some of the different sets. But the autograph signings, it's such an honor to do, to get a chance to be one-on-one with these athletes for sure.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit more then, if we can. Do you have stories about some signings you've done? Where do they come to your store to do the signing? Are you traveling throughout the province of Alberta hunting these guys down? I'll leave it open to you to just sort of entertain us for the next few minutes here.
Sure. So yes, and yes. And I don't know how much time you have for some of these stories, Jeremy, or how much time we have to do all this. But I mean, there's some just great stories that I can share. I'll start off with one of the best stories for me anyway, was having a chance to meet Shane Doan, hence the Shane Doan jersey over there. He became one of my favorite hockey players through the meeting with through Upper Deck. So I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but Upper Deck contacted me, said, you got to meet Shane Doan. And I'd always heard good things about the dude. So I had to meet him in Stettler, which is about an hour and a half or 2 hours away from Edmonton. So they gave me his cell number and I left a message saying, hey, look, I'm supposed to meet you in Stettler, what time works for you? And he never got back to me. So got a hold of his agent and he said, well, let's do noon. I'll get a hold of Shane and we'll get this set up for noon. So I'm like, great. So 9:30 rolls by, hear nothing back. 10 rolls by, hear nothing back. 10:30, I get to the shop finally, and I'm at the shop at 11 o'clock, and my cell phone rings, and it's Shane Doan. And it's about 11:15. He goes, hey, he said, I hear you're supposed to meet me at noon. He said, how far are you away? I'm like, well, I didn't know I was supposed to be, get on the road here. So I said, I'm an hour and a half away. I said, so I can meet you around 1 if I get going. He goes, great, meet you then. So we get to the Dairy Queen, we sit and do the signing. Most of these signings, depending on how many cards the player has to sign, I get to the Dairy Queen, we sit down, he starts signing these cards, and it took about, I don't think, an hour and 15 minutes. And after that, we sat there for about 2 hours just shooting the breeze. He could have easily just got up and left like a lot of players do. They're done their signing, I gather the cards, we move on. But we just sat there talking about working out and hockey. And he asked me how, what I did. And he asked me, how I work out. And he asked me how far I went into hockey. And we sat talk about the Coyotes. And it went on for 2 hours. And I remember, getting calls from the shop going, when are you coming back? I'm like, I'm not leaving. As long as this guy wants to sit and chat, we'll sit and chat. Yeah. But what a genuine guy. And I heard a ton of stories after that about how unique this guy was in terms of the way he carried himself. And I think everybody's heard stories about how nice this guy is, and he probably give the shirt off his back to anybody. So that was one of my best experiences and became an instant fan of Shane Doan. So that was one of the better stories for sure.
Well, we have that in common, that I'm a fan of Shane Doan, mostly because he was the last active player that ever played for the Winnipeg Jets version 1.0, which was my original team. I remember him being drafted and coming out and playing for the Jets, and then the Jets left pretty much right away. And Shane Doan was always a player that I wanted to collect and have some cards. So I do have a small Shane Doan collection. And when you tell me that he is just a great guy, I don't know about everybody else listening and watching right now, but I ask you guys, when you collect, they often say you don't want to meet your heroes. You don't want to meet the people that you maybe look up to or collect. You don't want to meet the player you collect. You might be disappointed. It sounds to me like collecting Shane Doan would not result in disappointment for me. So I love to hear that, Wayne. I love to hear that. Are there Shane Doan collectors in Edmonton besides yourself?
There is. That was the crazy part that I found out. I thought, I knew there'd be fans for sure, because we used to have family members come in and buy some cards. So I thought, there's definitely fans of his. But I know when I was bidding on cards on eBay, or any of the platforms trying to find cards, I couldn't believe how many people I was bidding against. So it was an eye opener to see how many true fans there were of this guy. And let's face it, it wasn't like he was a terrible hockey player. The guy was known as Captain Canada. He played for Team Canada. He obviously captain of both Winnipeg. I think he was captain of Winnipeg, was he not? At one point, or was he I don't remember.
I don't remember. I mean, 20 years. Yeah, I'm not sure, but he might have had a letter.
Yeah.
He might have had a letter.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, just a true leader, and a good hockey player, a great person, had a great NHL career, just shy of 1,000 points. So again, I enjoyed, and I still do collector's cards. If a unique card comes by, I'm there to buy it for sure.
Are you going to collect his son's card, Josh Doan, now of the Utah Hockey Club? Are you going to collect? Because I know, listen, I likely will pick up a few Josh Doan, because I just know he comes from a good family. He's going to be a nice kid like his dad. You know, he's going to be playing with Tija Ginla, son of Jerome Ginla, you know, the biggest player to ever playing, probably the most popular Calgary Flame of all time. No offense, Lanny McDonald, but you know what I'm saying? Will you pick up the odd Josh Doan card now?
I've been asked that so many times, Jeremy, and I probably will. Knowing the family and knowing the dad, and you could see how proud his dad was. You know, the last couple games of the season when he was playing, Shane was just over the moon. Like, they showed clips of him hugging his wife and just elated that his son was in the NHL, and had a great couple of games too. So yeah, I'll be one of the guys in line purchasing some of the cards for sure.
Canada Blue here says, Doan is a great guy. He walked around Phoenix like a regular guy, was not smothered with fans at all. One might see him and his family in line for a movie. Regular guy. That's nice to hear, Canada Blue. Thank you for sharing. The professor, for CC says, love the Doan story, can only be topped if you met him to sign at a Timmy's and not at a Dairy Queen. Wayne, have you ever met an athlete at a Tim Hortons to do a signing?
I never have. No, most of the signings I do were either at the arena, at their own homes, at the shop, or that one was an oddity. I think there was only a couple times that I was outside, as aforementioned areas.
Awesome. Mitch Grotman says, that's an awesome story. Jeff McMahon says he was the Coyotes captain for 14 years, Shane Doan was. And Clay Phillips, good evening to you. You mentioned sticker autos a bit earlier. Michael Ham, buddy of mine, says, good evening. I don't dislike specific sticker autos, but it's horrible when they go off the sticker. And that I saw Mike Tyson autograph the other day in person, and it was like half of it was off the sticker. So I agree with that comment myself. Skeppy has this is a great question here. You alluded to this earlier, Wayne, but I want to let you answer this fully. He says, what were the toughest years to get through over the last 35 years? What were the key things you did to get through them? This is a big question. I think it's a good one.
Oh, great question. Absolutely great question. So we diversified. That's the simple way to answer that question. We realized that cards were going to be a grind in years, and it's like any collectible market. I don't care what you're involved in, whether it's coins, stamps, comic book, action figures, it doesn't matter. There's a roller coaster ride on every one of these collectible items. And we've seen it in the card market for years, the dips and the rises of values and the big players that come through that change a year or change the dynamics for a few years. So we just plain and simply diversified. We started carrying a lot of licensed goods. We got very heavy into collectibles. We started carrying Lego. That was a big decision we made just due to space, because it takes up so much space. But we started carrying Lego, and that's been a great. I'm so happy we made that partnership. We actually almost got turned down for that when we applied for the thing. Back then, they were pretty stringent about who they accepted, and I remember the rep that I had looked at our shop and said, "No, I don't know," and I kind of had to fight for it. But they accepted us back, and I think it was 2003, 4, something like that. And we started carrying Lego. But yeah, to answer the question, we just started diversifying, finding other ways to bring in revenue to kind of bridge the gap of years that were a challenge for us.
All right. Good evening to Joe Perot. Good evening, Clay Phillips. And here's a hot seat question for you, Wayne, from the professor. He says, what is your view as an LCS owner of Upper Deck EPAC?
Well, it's going to be double-sided edge here. When I first started hearing about it happening, and it was quite a few years ago, I was a little on edge. Obviously, we look at it as an LCS as a way to infiltrate what we do, for people to go direct to Upper Deck and skirt what how we do our business. So I was a little concerned. Is it taking away some of the things we do? Sure, it is. I'd be naive to think that people aren't just going straight to there and buying their e-packs and doing what they got to do. Upper Deck offers an achievement award, so obviously that is something that people look forward to doing. But let's face it, any way we can get cards out into people's hands, and there are people that live nowhere near a card shop, and maybe they have a 7-Eleven or something like that they can buy cards. I mean, let's face it, that's not a great way to be able to card collect. This is a way for them to get their cards. So am I 100% against it? No. Does it please me that it's happening sometimes when we hear someone walk in? Oh man, I just spent 3 weeks worth of salary on e-pack. No, I'm not happy about hearing that either.
Yeah, I think that's a real fair answer. But to me, the one thing that I like about it is what you mentioned, that it helps cards get to people who don't have an LCS nearby. But not to say they couldn't just go to your website and still buy product that way and have it shipped out. So there's still that, I guess, as well. But it's business, I suppose it comes down to, and everybody's got to, you got to adapt, and you've proven over 35 years that you can and will adapt. And I'm going to just add, do you have any concern for yourself at Wayne Sports Cards, like that something could happen and would be harder to adapt? I ask this because you've done so. I mean, I haven't seen your books, but just the fact that you've been doing this for 35 years, you're still heavily involved. The whole family's involved. Do you have any question of your own ability to adapt to what might come in the future?
So that's two questions. Do I have questions about my ability? No. I have faith I can kind of decide, where I need to turn, when I need to turn, or when I need to adjust, when I need to adjust. But let's face it, there's a lot of things out of our control, Jeremy, and the market, what goes on. There's a lot of things that we can't control. If tomorrow Upper Deck says, you know what, we're shutting it down, we don't need LCS. We're going to close the program. We don't need it anymore. Everybody just either buys e-packs or buys direct on our, what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do. There's no way to pivot around that. There's no way to make a turn. So you always have to be looking over your shoulder. If anybody ever says in any business that I'm safe, I have nothing to worry about, I think they're kidding themselves and they're fooling themselves. You always have to be concerned and looking over your shoulder at the way the market's turning and the way things are adjusting. There were periods of time that I will admit that we were kind of on coast mode, where things were going as is. And I think that's more in the down times than in the big times, where we just kind of let things go. And I'll admit, you kind of get complacent, and maybe you're not as concerned about cards being sold in Walmart, or an e-pack scenario coming up, or 2 or 3 new shops opening up in your city. So those are the times that I guess you kind of sit back and you don't do anything. But it's the times when you start getting people kind of chasing you and pushing on your back that you have to make a quick decision sometimes. And again, to answer what you asked, no one's ever safe. You've always got to make sure that you have an exit strategy or a place to move or something you want to do to adjust to whatever happens.
Yeah, no, great answer. I think that's all very fair and practical, very practical. Larry says, e-pack is great in America. I have difficulty finding hockey cards in Colorado Springs and don't want to drive to Denver. So there's a real life example. Still only 25 cents, says, can tag pick up blizzard droplets for cards signed at DQ. Probably. Wayne, have you ever done an athlete signing, an autograph signing at a Dairy Queen? Oh, you did. You just mentioned the Dairy Queen. That was the Dairy Queen.
I did. Yeah. But if you want another story, so here's a story of a situation with cards that that can't be avoided. So one of the signings I did was with Dwayne Rollison, and I ended up at his house to do it. And his 2 dogs were at home, and his kid was at home. So it became an interesting situation where he was trying to juggle the dog who kept running back and forth and his son who kept running back and forth. So we ended up, he kind of knocked a glass of water and it kind of spilled and it didn't hit any cards, but you can imagine the cringe from me watching this water kind of hit on the table. I'm like, oh boy. So I'm quickly moving the cards away and cleaning it up. But the funny part of the story was he was signing plexiglass cards from Trilogy. And his son came running downstairs again after playing upstairs for a few minutes and came down and he said, Daddy, can I sit with you while you're doing this? And his dad said, sure, as long as you don't move. So he propped his son up on his lap and he's reaching around him signing these plexiglass cards. And as he's about to sign one of the cards that's numbered, his son goes, Daddy, and turns around. And needless to say, Rollison's hand went right across the card and left this line. So he kind of looked at me, goes, what do I do? And I kind of just shrugged my shoulders going, nothing you can do with that. So I sent that into Upper Deck, and I'm sure that didn't meet quite a QA. That's for sure.
That's hilarious. All right, we are going to bring Leighton on for the Vintage Spotlight segment of the show. When we are done with that, Wayne, I want to remember, I'm going to make a note here. I want to ask you, and I do know the answer, everybody, but I'm going to ask it anyway, whether you've done signings with Connor McDavid, and maybe you have some stories to go along with that. But before we get to that, let's bring on Leighton. Leighton, are you ready? Leighton's giving me the thumbs up. Leighton, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you. Please meet Wayne. Wayne, please meet Leighton.
Hey, Wayne, how are you?
Hey, pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Good. Okay. Well, and it's always nice to introduce two friends to each other here on the show. And Leighton, thanks for joining. You're running late though, buddy. What's going on today?
I mean, I'm a man about town. New York City. It took a little bit longer to get back than originally expected.
All right. I hear you. Thank you for making the time, making the show. And as you know, we have Wayne Wagner from Wayne Sports Cards and Collectibles in Edmonton. And as we do, I like to ask our featured guest, Wayne, tonight, to come with some sort of vintage themed question for you, Leighton. So Wayne, I'm going to turn it over to you, and feel free to really talk about anything vintage themed, because I want to hear you guys talk. But go ahead, please, Wayne.
Yeah. So one of the questions I get quite often is, obviously we see all the new cards hit the market. We see the Connor Bedards, Connor McDavids, all the new rookies and all the hype. Where do you see the future of vintage cards? Like, where is it going? What do you see as a trend? Is there anything you can tell people, or I can pass on to people, that you can give some advice on where vintage is heading and where it plays in the market as we continue to kind of see these new hot rookies enter the market?
That's a great question, Wayne. First, I think that the vintage card market is as strong as it's ever been. That being said, I want to be clear, whether it be to you, Wayne, anyone watching Jeremy's show, or anyone at your shop, I don't want to offer investment advice. It's not what I do for a living. But if you're asking me direct questions about the vintage card market, I think it's really strong. But make no mistake, you just mentioned, for example, like Connor Bedard and Connor McDavid, both tremendous hockey talents. Forget about collectability or anything along those lines. One of the things, Wayne, that is a stark difference, and I run a vintage breaking company, so I know firsthand, the difference between, even call it modern hockey cards and vintage hockey cards, you are not able to actually pull out these vintage hockey greats out of packs, because in many cases, these packs don't exist. So I see a lot of the appeal of whether it be Connor McDavid or Bedard, even though McDavid's cards are certainly at this point, almost vintage in the modern hockey market. Both of those cards can be pulled from packs, and I see a lot of the fun to be had in doing that. Whereas vintage, it's a little bit more sophisticated, Wayne. You have to seek the card out. Is it going to be graded? What's the grade to go after? Meaning you're not getting them out of packs. There's no chance, or generally very little chance to do that. And so it just, the collecting mentality is a little bit different. That being said, I do see vintage cards as a little bit safer than modern cards as far as the up and down fluctuations of value. But all of that aside, that's no guarantee of future performance of what these cards are going to sell for. And so I hope I did the best that I could to answer your questions, because I do think vintage cards are safe, but I also wouldn't want to recommend someone into your shop, coming into your shop and say, hey, this is the investment for you, Because if you get a lot of enjoyment out of opening up an Upper Deck Series 1 box and looking for a Bedard rookie, who am I to say that that's the wrong way to collect? But if they're talking to you, Wayne, about their budget, and they said to you, hey, I only have $1,000, and if I run out of this $1,000, I'm never going to be able to buy cards again, well, then I would advise to go vintage versus modern. I hope some of that makes sense.
Absolutely does. Yep. Thank you. That's great.
I have a question, a vintage theme question for you, Wayne, which, it's been a while since I've been in your store, but I've seen your selection at the Expo, and you brought a good singles collection to the Expo. I judge an LCS by the singles in the showcases, the diversity, the between sport and era versus the wax on the shelf. Personally, this is to your own question a bit, Wayne. I think, how popular are vintage singles out of your showcases versus modern day young guns and other Prism basketball rookies or what have you?
Great question, and that is kind of asking me the question I asked Leighton. I love vintage, so I want to make that clear too. That the question was more, Leighton knows his stuff. I'm more novice in terms of the vintage stuff. I know my cards. I know the years, I know the players, but I'm not as versed in terms of the vintage stuff as the current stuff. But I love vintage. It's one of my, and I'll grab the card now because there's one of my faves. I absolutely love the card. So that was one of the cards that I picked up that, speaking of vintage, that's just something to me that's just so unique. You don't see a lot of these cards. So to answer your question, Jeremy, I sell a good number of vintage when I can find it. So, to Leighton's point, it is difficult to find. And when people bring it in, they're very savvy on values. Not that you want to take advantage of any situation. We've always been a shop that I will, plain and simple, share values with everybody. I will tell you what the cards are worth and then tell you what I'm willing to pay on what you have, not trying to take advantage of any situation. But you don't see a lot of that great stuff come in anymore. So when it does come in, it doesn't last long in the display case. We have a group of collectors, and obviously being in business for 35 years, a good group of guys that as soon as they walk in and they see a card in my display case, and just recently I had a couple of Lemieux come in, a Lemieux rookie 8, a Peachy 8, and a Topps 8. They went in the display case and they lasted a whole, I think it was not even a day. So it does go very quick.
Leighton, what do you make of that? And do you have any sort of questions or anything that you would like to ask Wayne?
Yeah, well, first is I would say, Wayne, it sounds like you should get more vintage in your store. I think that would help business. Secondly, the question I have for you, I'm curious. I feel like there's still a lot of fresh stuff in Canada. You alluded to that maybe there's not as much vintage coming in as you'd like, but do you have a fun walk-in collection to your store that was vintage that you could share with everyone? Because I would love to hear.
Yeah, I've had a few. One of them, and I passed down to the States. Actually, we had a Mickey Mantle rookie come in the shop that was just stunning. And I just straight up with the customer. I said, look, this is what you have to do. And I sent him to the grading companies and said, this is what I want you to do. Send it to this auction house, send it to this auction house, whatever you want. I gave them all kind of information. I said, this is your best course of action. So that was, just to have the card in the shop is number one. And maybe, shops have had many cards like that come by, but in Canada, we don't see a lot of Mickey Mantle rookies come by our way. But we did have a really, really nice collection come by. It was basically every single set of O-Pee-Chee ever produced from 68, 69 and up. And then there is a good chunk of Topps and Parkhurst sets from 51, 52 and up. And it was amazing. It broke the bank, but it was something else. Like the Gordie Howe rookie was there, the Bobby Orr rookie was there, and it was amazing. So that was one of the prize collections that came by, and it's actually a treat because we see McDavid's all the time. Even today, I had a guy come by with 2 McDavid Young Guns. So we see that a dime a dozen come by all the time. But to see stuff like that, it was great. a lot of fun going through. I can imagine, and I'm very envious of guys that do deal in vintage, because I'm saying this, and for you guys, this is just common. You see this all the time. But when I see stuff like that, it was so exciting going through.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Wayne.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Guys, I want to let everybody know, including you, Wayne, that Leighton and I, yesterday, we recorded episode 4 of the Vintage Spotlight podcast, which has its own YouTube channel, its own podcast platform. Again, Vintage Spotlight. Please check it out on YouTube, on podcast, subscribe, all those things. We'd greatly appreciate it. We had a great guest on yesterday, episode 4 is set to drop. What did I tell you today, Wayne? Leighton, I think Monday, early morning, episode 4 will drop, but there's 3 episodes up there already that you guys can all check out. If you're not yet following Leighton on Instagram, Leighton_Sheldon, _collect, and he's got his own podcast. It's a good one, Trading Card Therapy. Check that out as well. Leighton, anything going on that you'd like to let us know about before we wrap up the Vintage Spotlight segment here?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you, Jeremy, and anyone else who's going to be at Fanatics Fest next weekend. I will be there all day. Next Friday, please come by to our Just Collect booth and say hi. And I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Awesome. Well, Leighton, thank you for showing up tonight. Better late than never. I did get your text, but I was doing the show, so I didn't respond.
Figured.
Thank you for coming, and my honor to introduce you two fine gentlemen to each other. So thank you, Leighton.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy and Wayne. It was great meeting you.
Yeah, pleasure meeting you too, Leighton.
Take care. Be well, gentlemen. Bye.
Thank you, Leighton. All right, Wayne, we're going to pick up where we left off. I want to read a comment here from CC. He says, I just looked online and saw some pictures and videos of your store, Wayne. Love the variety from cards to games to non-sport. Shop looks awesome. I hope to visit. Should I get to Edmonton and to watch an Oilers game? As you should, CC, as you should. And YK says, not a question, but was really impressed by the Bossy collection Wayne had for sale at the Expo, of which I secured a card for myself from that collection as well, Wayne. So that was nice. Anything you want to say about that particular collection?
No, that was a treat running through again to see somebody, that crazy. And he was an Islander fan is what the collector was. Huge Islander fan, but had a ton of Bossy and Trottier stuff. So just seeing some of that stuff again that you would never see, you'll see your Bossy rookies and other cards come in, but to see that mass of Islander stuff, and I can imagine it's no different than anybody, whether you collect, Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or Calgary or anybody. I can only imagine the size of some of the collections, but to see that collection like that was just, just a treat to run through, to see all the different things, all the 101s, all the ones out of 10, and some of the ones where there was 3 of the cards, and he had all 3, 1, 2, and 3 of a Mike Bossy card. So it was really cool running through.
That's very cool. And here's a question from Still Only 25 Cents. He says, can Wayne speak to the Bedard tax on 23-24 product? How is it good for the hobby? Well, that assumes it is good for the hobby. We all know once a precedent is set and prices go up, it's much harder for them to come down. Anything you'd like to comment on that, Wayne?
That's really tough because we're seeing it all over the place. Let's face it. Ever since COVID came around, the game changed forever. We'll never be able to go back. As much as I would love to see us roll back to where boxes of Upper Deck were $99.95 or $79.95 or whatever the release was back then. Let's look at other companies. Prism basketball or football was $299 or $199 a box, and now they're well over $1,000. I don't know if we're ever going to see a rollback, and that's due to just a number of factors. Obviously, COVID changed the game forever. We've got so many different investors involved in the game. Breakers have changed the game again forever. As long as breakers are out there to buy boxes, regardless of the price point, I just don't see a rollback. As much as I don't enjoy it, it's not fun watching people walk in who may have been out of the hobby for a while, and whether or not they just returned for Bedard or just returned because they wanted to get back, watching the sticker shock on their face when they walk in. And the last time they bought a box of Upper Deck hockey cards was $79.95, and they're walking in seeing a box now for $300. It's not enjoyable. It's not fun. But unfortunately, that is that is the game. That's the way it's going to go, and I think it's no different than anything else we see in the market. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, and I go back to whether it's comics or coins or cards or autographed memorabilia. Michael Jordan autographed jerseys at one point in time were $1,500 and $1,900. They're now, and I forget what, I think it's $25,000. So that Bedard tax, as everybody does call it did affect the card market, and it has affected prices of cards. But I think it's just following everything else that's happened in the last 4 or 5 years.
I mean, it's what the market will bear, and any business is incentivized to maximize profits, including card companies. We, the hobby, don't necessarily like that too much because we don't want to feel gouged, but it's all you can do is speak with your wallet if you don't like it. I think that's the only power or leverage that the collector has. So, okay. I want to say hello to Yitz. Welcome to the show, Yitz. Good to see you, pal. I wanted to come back to what we were talking about before Leighton came on and ask you about Connor McDavid. Have you ever had the chance to do a signing for Upper Deck with Connor McDavid?
Yes. Yeah, we have. We've actually done a couple now. And that's in cooperation with Upper Deck staff. That was not just me doing solo. Obviously, you can imagine there's very sensitive issues in terms of making sure things are done properly, and making sure things are done legit, because you're talking about stuff that has a good dollar value attached to it in cards and memorabilia. But they did call on me. They had one of the staff members coming up. They needed some help. So yeah, we did have Connor McDavid come to the shop after hours and do a signing on a bunch of stuff. Like I said, in cooperation with an Upper Deck staff member. And then I had the opportunity to do a second signing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And I got to tell you, what a treat. Again, spending time with those two gentlemen. And a lot of times I think there's a lot of players, not just those two, but other players that take a lot of heat for being standoffish. We see an interview with media and they look very standoffish, and people think, wow, stuck up guy. I got to tell you, whether or not they were doing it because it's Upper Deck, whether or not they're being paid to do it, both very genuine guys, full of conversations. Sometimes you have to crack the door open to have a conversation with these guys to keep it flowing for the hour and a half or 2 hours that you're with them signing. I can tell you with Leon, I started the conversation and he ended it. It was basically me asking a few questions and he just went on and on and on. So it just tells you that these guys aren't as standoffish as everybody believes. They are great people, and I can't speak enough about both guys, both Connor and Leon.
And so did you do what you said? I think you said you've done 2 signings with Connor McDavid. Were they both in the store?
No, one was in the shop, and one we met downtown at the arena with both those guys. So
the one that was at the shop, I mean, you said after hours. So all day in the shop, you're there with your staff that knows Connor McDavid is coming to the store later, and you got all these customers coming through that have no idea that a few hours later, if they were just wait outside and watch, they would see Connor McDavid walk into the shop. Was it hard to keep that to yourself? Were you allowed to invite anybody, family, some great customers to meet Connor in that environment? How did that all pan out?
So when I got asked to participate, obviously, and it was a little bit of a rush because they were in desperate need of getting some cards done and some other stuff done. So it was kind of rushed to do. So it wasn't like I had 2 months to plan this and say, hey guys, stick around, or, if you want to just sit outside, he's coming by. It was pretty rushed, getting the stuff to me and getting this all organized. We did have a couple staff members, the 2 customers I mentioned, Daryl and Clarence, myself and Nikki, and then the Upper Deck staff that were there to do all this. But it was pretty cool. I will admit it was maybe the longest 6-hour day I've ever had, from opening till close, waiting for that to happen, because it was my first experience one-on-one with Connor McDavid. So I was very giddy to have this opportunity. And it was a lot of fun. It was a long night. I think it was 3 hours worth of signing. But it was probably one of the greatest experiences for me, for sure.
Well, still only 25 cents says hockey players have always seemed like the most down to earth of athletes. Some just have more outgoing personalities than others. Speaking of outgoing personalities, when you had you've done 2 signings with Connor McDavid. I don't know how much time lapsed in between, but one was in the shop, the other one wasn't. Did he remember you? Did he look up and be like, oh, I know this guy? Like, what was that like the second time? Was there any familiarity? Obviously, you know who he is, but was there any familiarity on his part?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was the first story I told everybody after, and that was just me. It was no other staff or Nikki wasn't involved. So it was just me, and it was the first story I told. I went downtown to meet with the Upper Deck staff member, and Connor came in, and I think he forgot that I had Connor. So the Upper Deck staff introduced, said, "Hey, this is Wayne from Wayne Sports Cards," and the first thing Connor said was, "Hey, Wayne, how you doing? How's the shop going?" And he just started talking, and it was really cool. I mean, the guy meets thousands of people. I can't imagine how many people. But so for him to remember and have a little bit of a chat about the shop and have a good discussion was really, really cool. And like I said, it was the first thing I said. I was so excited about that. I couldn't wait to get back to the shop to say, "Hey, you won't believe this. He remembered me. He remembered me." So it was a lot of fun.
So to everybody watching, listening, if you ever see Wayne at an expo or card show or at his shop in Edmonton, you got to go in. You got to say, "Hey, Wayne, how's it going? How's the shop going?" And then I want to ask Wayne next time we see him, how many people said that to you? Because that's pretty funny, Wayne. That's really cool that he did remember you. I mean, these are people. I don't want to say they're just people, but they are people, and they they have relationships in life as well. And it's nice. It's nice that he didn't, what's it called? Big time you, I think that's what the kids are calling it nowadays. He didn't big time you. Dave Kaplan, what's going on, Dave? Nice to see you. Still only 25 cents. Lots of great comments from this viewer today. Says, thanks for the honest answer and appreciate how you brought up breakers as a retailer that has a breaking program. What are your thoughts on the growth in that space?
Another great question. We're late to the game. I'll be the first to admit that. You kind of, I know what breaking has done. I know for people that don't get involved in breaking, whether you're a shop or whether you're a consumer, you're not enamored by the whole process because you realize, obviously it has been one of the contributing factors to the price raise, and there's no denying that fact. We were late to it. We didn't start until October of last year when Ty, as I mentioned, Ty kind of fell into our lap and we had that mutual conversation and it worked out just fantastic. I think the space is very full. There's so many breakers out there. I think it's very important for people too, and this is not pumping our own tires or anybody's tires, but just should be wary of some of the breakers they get involved with because we've all seen some of the scams that go on. So you want to be very wary of the breakers you're involved in or involved with, but the space still has room to move. No different than card shops. Back in the 90s when the shops were opening up, it seemed like every day 2 or 3 shops opened up in every city. For anybody to tell somebody that there wasn't room for another shop to open, and I wasn't one of the first people in Edmonton. I mean, I opened up and there was probably 10 or 15 shops in Edmonton. So for somebody to tell me, hey, there's no room for you to open your shop, here I am 35 years later. So going back to the breakers situation, people say, oh, there's no room for breakers. There's so many breakers in the hobby right now. Try telling somebody that maybe does a great job and will be around for 35 years doing their breaking. So yeah, I think there's still room to grow, but there is a lot of breakers out there.
Fair. Yeah. I think that all makes sense to me. Stukes wants to know, what is the baseball and other sport market like in Edmonton? I think we're thinking about baseball, football, basketball, predominantly there.
The markets are great. Obviously hockey there's no question it's a predominant sport in Edmonton. It's what we live and breathe. The old joke, we were all born with hockey sticks in our hand is probably true to some degree. So hockey is number one, but baseball, basketball, football, UFC, all that stuff, it does very, very well for us. Is it the same as hockey? No, it's a pale comparison. Probably no different than if you were to talk to somebody in the US about whether hockey is comparable to baseball. The answer would probably be a resounding no. But there is a ton of fans, there is a ton of collectors, and we do very well with all those sports.
Awesome. Colin Murray, what's going on? And Joe Perot says, for Wayne, which NBA players are the most popular with your customers?
What's hot? That seems to be the flavor. Jordan still is a popular purchase for a lot of people. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Doncic is another one, but it's the flavor of the month. Let's face it. Anytime somebody enters, whether it's Zion, any one of these guys, there's always such a big fanfare behind the new talent. And we see it more, not necessarily with the veteran collectors, but more with the younger crowd. A lot of them really turn to, the new flavor and start collecting all those guys. So Jordan still sells, but I still believe it's the new rookie crop every time it comes out.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. What about, and I know Joe is a big Golden State Warriors fan. What about Steph Curry? Do you get any people asking for Steph Curry cards in Edmonton? Yeah,
another guy that we get asked questions for on a regular basis. And I'm trying to think of a couple other guys, but he's definitely, another one that we have no problem. And some of the veterans too. Larry Bird, people come in for Magic Johnson, like some of the legends like that. But there's still a group of about 10 guys we get asked for on a regular basis.
Nice. Here's one. We're going to test your memory. A question from the professor. He says, what is the most memorable card that was pulled in your shop? Oh boy. I mean,
that is testing. So I think recently, and I'll speak to that. So the Connor McDavid Cup rookie that is graded a 10, that card came out of our shop. I remember that day vividly because I had brought out, there was 3 customers that came in the shop at the same time and they all asked for a case of Cup. So I brought out 3 cases and the third guy let the other 2 pick. And unfortunately, that did not work out well for him because the other 2 guys that opened their case both pulled a Connor McDavid 99 patch rookie. So that was a little painful, but the kind of cool story was both guys ended up selling their cards to actually the same collector in Ontario. They both, I think they ended up, one guy got 17,000, the other guy got 17,500. And without making the story long, that card ended up cycling through and ended up getting graded by PSA at a 10. So that card came out of our shop, which was really cool.
That's pretty cool. And I was going to ask you, I don't know if you can quantify this, but how often do people buy unopened product in your store and sit there and open it with you or the other staff watching, other customers watching? Is that a common occurrence at Wayne Sports Cards and Collectibles?
Yes. Yeah, we allow the space. We've got it pretty, you've seen the shop, Jeremy. We've got it pretty well laid out where there's a lot of counter space and a lot of area for people to work with. So percentage wise, I don't know if I could really calculate that for you, but there is a really good number of people that really enjoy opening up in the shop. That way they protect their cards right away. And there is some fun, especially on a busy day, like a Saturday or a release day on a Wednesday, when you've got an audience. It's always fun pulling a monster hit and being able to share it with other collectors. So we do get a good portion of people that open the shop.
Yeah, that's cool. It just makes the whole experience. It makes the experience, and it makes other people's experiences fun as well. Larry's Classic has just a sort of add on to the question about what players are collectible non-hockey. He says, do Canadians like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray, do they do well up in Canada? So do you get people asking you for the Canadian-born players that are not playing hockey, the Larry Walkers of the world, if you will?
Yeah, and that's a great name, Jeremy. Larry Walker was huge. I remember when he came out, we were selling his cards like crazy. So we do get a little bit of that. I don't think it's crazy. It's not like just because he was born in Canada that people absolutely have to own his cards. There are questions for all of these guys, but it's not, a door pounding where we've got a lineup to ask for a specific rookie. No.
Okay, and I want to go to Mark Santucci's question. He wants to know, does Wayne have a lot of cards, both personal and for your business, from the 70s? Example, Rod Gilbert, Guy Lafleur, Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, maybe Tony Esposito. Do you stock a lot of 70s players, Wayne, personally and in the store?
We try. Personally, yes. As I mentioned, I really enjoy the vintage. I think it's really cool. I think it's I don't want to say untapped because obviously there's a lot of people that collect vintage, but I think it's a market that people overlook because they're so enamored with the new rookies when they come out. You know, every Bedard comes out, and I'm going to tell you that 99% of the people aren't even paying attention to a Guy Lafleur rookie or a Ken Dryden rookie or anything like that because they're so concerned with making sure they get the Bedard. But it's a lot of fun, and I think Leighton mentioned it. It's just finding those cards and in the shape you want. You know, we can all find cards that are mangled and beat up. I mean, how many Gretzky ones have you come across, Jeremy, that look like they've been manhandled? And trying to find those 6, 7, 8s are not as easy. So trying to find those cards in great shape are tough. I personally, I have every single O-Pee-Chee set ever produced. It's one of the things, and I continue to build it every single year. I build an O-Pee-Chee set. I love the product. I love the brand. I love the name. So I keep the tradition, and every year that it's been produced, I've built a set. So I enjoy it. As for the shop, as I mentioned, there's not a lot of opportunity for me to keep in stock. I could honestly make a phone call. So when a Gretzky rookie comes in, or a Lemieux rookie, or a Lafleur rookie, or a Dryden rookie, or an Orr rookie, all I have to do is make a call to a group of 10 or 12 collectors that I have, and the card's gone. They'll tell me not even to put it in the display case. And it was actually funny. We kind of put that to the test, and hopefully he's not watching this because he's going to get mad at me. We put out a couple of cards, and I kind of had to cover up a little bit because I never called him on it. It was a Gretzky rookie, and he walked in, and sometimes he doesn't necessarily walk around the shop looking. He comes in and buys what he has to buy, or things that I've set aside for him. And one day we were a little busy, so he walked around, and I saw him walking around, and he kind of points to the display case, and he sees the 2 cards I put out there. And I'm sure I turned about 7 shades of red, and he goes, "What are these doing out here?" So it's very tough. I enjoy picking up the vintage. But it does not last long. So to answer your question again, giving you the long version of the story, we don't have a lot because it doesn't last in the shop.
Well, that's a great reason not to have a lot, because it doesn't last. That's pretty cool. I want to talk a bit about how the hobby's evolved. You've been in the business now 35 years or so. There's a lot of gripes. People have a lot of gripes with this hobby. Are the gripes today the same or similar to the way they were 20, 30 years ago? If you could kind of just, scratch out things like the technological evolution, like, we online marketplaces, grading has taken off. All these things have taken off so much. But, generally speaking, when you have a customer that comes in the store now, do they have similar complaints or issues now than they did way back?
Yeah, I think it's a little exaggerated now in terms of the amount of. Obviously, we have more collectors. Let's face it. It's like anything that goes on. If you have 10 collectors, you might have one person that gripes about costs or gripes about something else. If you've got 100 collectors, you're going to have 10. If you have 1,000, it just keeps exponentially going up. So the more collectors we have, the more you're going to hear about it without question. I always say it this way: when it comes to that type of situation, because we do hear it on a regular basis, where I bought a box of cards, I paid $300 for the box, and I'm lucky if I got $30. I think what people have to understand is, if it was that easy to open up a box of cards, if every single box that we opened up, if it was a $300 box and every box yielded $400, I'd have been retired 20 years ago, and I probably wouldn't be talking to you from home right now, Jeremy. I'd be on some beach or some vacation place talking to you about something different. So it's not that easy, and it's much like anything else. Nothing is a guarantee. And I've often explained it and been a little bit more direct in my older years, let's call it, where I tell customers, look, if this is giving you a heartache and this is giving you grief, maybe it's not what you want to do. This is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to collect as a hobby. You're supposed to enjoy what you do. If money is the only objective at the end of the day, and you're going to stress about it, I just don't think it's the right way. But I'll often use a comparison. People that go to the casino, and again, this is ironic we're talking about this. We just had a group of guys. They were at a stag, and there were 6 guys, and they were at the casino, and they'd heard about the shop, so they decided to come in. They lived up north. they decided to come in, but they had come from the casino, and they went to the casino and they dropped $700 and they just put it down, lost it in seconds, and didn't think anything of it. So they weren't concerned about losing $700 at casino yet, and this wasn't them, but there are people that'll come into our shop, drop $700 and freak out because they spent $700 and all they have is $150 worth of cards. So I'm like, this is kind of, very strange that you go to a casino and gamble and you're not concerned about losing money, but you buy a box of cards and you're so concerned about your end dollar value. And I'll often use other comparisons where, people buy a brand new computer and you spend $1,000 on the computer. And the minute you walk out that door, that computer's worth nothing, but you don't complain about it. It's just no big deal. And then we'll get in the discussion of, cards are not a luxury. Well, cards are a luxury. So is a computer. So is a car. You drive a car off a lot. That car's lost 10% of its value the minute you drive the car off a lot. But we don't complain about it. You buy a $50,000 car. What have you lost? So I understand the complaint. As we see card values and card boxes go up in value, where it makes it harder and harder for people to buy, you say it, and you have to actually say it out loud, where you say a box of cards is $300. That's a lot of money for someone to shell out. So I can understand the frustration of buying a box of cards and not seeing what you feel is an appropriate value in a box of cards. But it really is life. It happens in everything we do, yet we seem to find fault with it in the card market.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts going through my head as you explain your thoughts on that. And one of my thoughts is, okay, well, a car, you have input costs, and then like metal and tires and all these different things, the fabrication. Well, it's the same with building a set of sports cards, except the licensing costs are an extremely, I'm guessing, a major part of the overall cost of building a card set, especially in today's exclusive license era. I want to transition over to exclusive licenses for a second, Wayne. And I want to ask you, I want to do that, but we had a couple. I want to backtrack first. A couple of comments before I get off topic here. Daniel A here said bang on, Wayne. The fact that nothing is a guarantee is what makes it exciting and makes you appreciate the wins that much more. I think that's a very fair and accurate comment there from Daniel. Okay. We are in the exclusive license era, and you've been around in the business long enough for where there was no exclusive license. There were several exclusive licenses. What are your thoughts on the way the licensing landscape has changed and evolved since you opened in 1991?
And I'm going to backtrack. Great comment by Daniel, because, that's, again, no different than winning the lottery. If every time you spent $1, you won $100, every one of us would be buying a lottery ticket. So it's the fact that you spend $1 and you win $1 million or win 10 million or win 50 million or whatever the number is. That's what makes it exciting. And that's exactly it in terms of a box of cards. You buy a box of cards for 100 or 200 or 300 and you pull that $5,000 card. That's what makes it exciting. But if you do it all the time, not so exciting. And the cards would not be worth the value they're worth.
Exactly.
Going back to your question, Jeremy, it's been interesting. Not so long ago, and it is quite a few years ago, but not so long ago, you had every company involved in every single sport. And I'll be honest, I think that made it confusing. There was a lot of confusion on customers of what company to buy and what product to buy. And there was no holds barred in terms of every company putting out X number of sets, and customers were just barraged with products coming out and very difficult to follow. And as a store, it made it difficult because you have this product coming in, this week is this, and next week it's that, and the week follows is these two products. And it was in every sport. So it made it almost unbearable to kind of follow what was going on. I kind of liked the way it went to where it was kind of separated, where football was with X company and hockey was with Y company. And the way it went, it made it much more clear and much more to follow. And I would imagine that goes up the ladder in terms of even the leagues trying to follow what went on. For them to hand out a license and have 4 companies that they had to manage and watch what was going on and make sure that they were doing the right thing and things not getting out of hand Now they've got to watch and monitor one. So I'm sure it makes it easy on them as well, but it makes it very simple for a consumer to know that if I'm buying basketball, it's Panini. If I'm buying baseball, it's Topps. If I'm buying hockey, it's Upper Deck, and much more easier to follow and pay attention to. We get the argument, we get the discussion, and I completely agree and understand where customers say, hey, there's no competition. You know, Upper Deck can do what they want in the hockey market and get away with whatever they want, and Panini can do whatever they want and get away. That carries some weight, but I don't think it carries all the weight in the world. They have to show responsibility as well, because these contracts are not lifelong contracts where it's not like Upper Deck has signed a 50-year deal that guarantees them they can do whatever they want for 50 years. A lot of these contracts are shorter terms, and again, that's for them to discuss years and what they have in terms of length. But they got to be careful if the companies don't, or the licenses and licensors don't like what they see. They can say, hey, you know what? You guys screwed up in that term. We don't like it. We're flipping companies. So you've got to still watch what you're doing.
And talking about flipping companies, that's happened recently with Fanatics coming in and acquiring basketball and football licenses, purchasing Topps. So have baseball. We're going to see Topps products in basketball starting right away here. Again, what are your thoughts? And you maybe even take us back when it was announced that Fanatics had usurped these licenses and then acquired Topps. I want to, if I can ask you, I want you to answer this, but I want you to kind of answer it from the Canadian LCS perspective, because my understanding is that it's very difficult for Canadian card shops to get any Panini basketball or football product, especially basketball. So what were your initial thoughts when you learned about the uprising of Fanatics in the hobby and the purchase of Topps as well by them?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll be the first to admit, and I'm not shy about saying this, and even in the shop, I'm not shy about sharing. It's been very difficult with both Panini and Topps. And this is my opinion, and I'm sure other stores might share the same thing. It's very unfair the way Canadians are treated in terms of getting product. I was able at one point in time to get as many cases of product as I want. And obviously, that's being tempered by saying, no, I could not order 100 cases and get 100 cases of a Topps product. But if I needed 5 or 10 or 15 cases, I was able to get that amount to have it in the shop for sale to our consumers. When Fanatics came into the market and when things changed and when Panini went different ways and when Topps changed ways, we were getting a fraction of what we were getting. And I don't really have the answer on why it happened, the reasoning behind it, but it became where instead of 10 cases of product or 15, I was getting 1 or 2. If I was getting 5 cases of product, I was getting 5 boxes. And it became almost unbearable having customers call on a regular basis going, well, you got me a case last year. How come you can't get it this year? So it's made it difficult, and you are correct, Jeremy. It has been very difficult for a lot of stores in Canada, including myself, to access any of the Topps or Panini products. And I don't think it's going to get any easier with Fanatics doing what they just did.
Okay, well, so that was my next question: is do you think it's going to get better with Fanatics now being at the head of these companies and these licenses? And I hope you're wrong. I hope it gets easier for you and all the other Canadian LCSs, and I hope the Fanatics does give some love to the Canadian market, because we're just up there, just above the United States. We're just a little bit north of the States. We are not too far away at all. I want to ask you about a very timely, recent issue that is really taking over the hobby narrative in the last few days. Week or so. Michael Ham posts the question into the chat. He says, what are Wayne's thoughts on the scanning of packs and boxes? And I guess I got to ask you, Wayne, are you aware of this issue, these MRI machines scanning to see what's inside these packs and boxes and cases of product? What are you aware of it, and what are your thoughts?
Yes, I am aware of it. And it is scary. We've seen all kind of trends, from when they started putting jersey cards and there's no jerseys, to people squeezing packs, to watching people sit in Walmarts and have their little weigh scale and weigh packs, to now we're dealing with scanners. So yeah, it isn't comfortable. it seems, and I won't use the word, but they're always one step ahead. Somebody seems to find a way to thwart an industry, to find a way to manipulate, to do whatever it is to advance themselves in terms of what they're getting. So I am aware of it. It's not a good situation, but let's face it. We've been able to adapt to everything. As I mentioned, jersey cards were in packs. What did companies do? Let's put decoys in. So we'll always find a way. There is a way, and I'm sure they'll find a way to keep it from where people can't scan a product. And I don't know what it is. I'm not a tech guy, so I can't say I would profess to say I know how it's going to be done, but I'm sure the card companies will find a way to stop it from happening. I'm sure they're aware of what's going on. They'll find a way to put a stop to it happening.
I hope so. I don't know. I hope so. I think there's two questions. One is, well, will they? And the second one is, how long would that take to develop the counter scanning technology? Because if it's going to take 5 years, that's a lot of time to leave the unsavory with that advantage. You know what I mean? So I hope you're right. And I hope it's going to be swift, because it seems to me like this could become a big issue out there in the hobby. Do you feel like it could be too, if it's not addressed swiftly and like effectively?
Yeah, and any gap in time, Jeremy, and that's my big concern. And I guess maybe I should have elaborated on that. My big concern is any time frame is a problem, because if they're out there scanning packs right now and boxes right now, what exactly are we buying? And I think most customers know, like, we do carry a ton of vintage product. Like, I'll go back and I have 80s O-Pee-Chee hockey, and I have 70s and 80s baseball boxes in my shop. And I do a very good job of making sure that anything that I purchase is 100% clean. I will not put anything suspect in my shop, and have been doing so for X amount of years. So having talked about this, I'm now out there buying some of the vintage stuff. Have I now purchased something that's already been scanned? So yeah, any time frame, Jeremy, is a big concern. You mentioned 5 years. I'll be honest with you, even months or a year could be detrimental and leave a major gap where people say, how do I know in that year that this wasn't stopped, that these packs and these things aren't scanned and these aren't gone through? And how do we go retro? We're talking about moving forward. So if the companies find a way tomorrow, that doesn't stop somebody from finding older product and doing that too. Let's use the Bedard year. They could take Bedard product that is now not in my possession, and that's kind of makes it safe, knowing that we hold product, that product is clean. But if I have to go out there and resource the product, how do I know that I haven't purchased something that's been run through?
Yeah. I think it's gonna cause some challenges for various different levels of stakeholder within our hobby, if not every level of stakeholder in our hobby, except the person that just collects, putting together base sets of 1960 Topps baseball and hockey. They don't have much to worry about. So it's not going to be every hobbyist, but it could be a very pervasive issue for sure. Want to get your thought next on unlicensed cards in the world of hockey. We've seen the In the Game brand lost its license after the lockout year, the Crosby Ovechkin year after 2005, and they, under Brian Price's leadership, continued to make unlicensed cards for many years. Now, Leaf Trading Cards makes unlicensed cards for hockey. I think they're slowing down a bit on the hockey volume, but they were definitely made a lot of hockey for a long time. Brian Price with his new unlicensed company called President's Choice Trading Cards. What are your thoughts? And especially as an Upper Deck, I'm sure you've got all the different statuses with Upper Deck that you could have. You probably have that and more by this point, Wayne. But what are your thoughts on those other companies making unlicensed cards, and how do you approach that from the business's perspective?
So Jeremy, there's room for everything. I used to be one of those guys, and I'll admit, again, in the younger days, when I saw unlicensed stuff, I was kind of against it. I didn't like the fact, again, people kind of skirting the process. Nobody wants to own anything unlicensed, was my opinion, because it's no different than a knockoff hockey jersey or stuff like that. Anybody can produce a hockey jersey, but if it's not licensed by Nike or Reebok or Adidas or whoever it is, it's not a real jersey. It's just some knockoff that somebody stitched together. So I always had that kind of dig-in attitude where I thought, hey, it's not licensed. To me, it's just not worthy. Now, I've kind of taken a step back because, it's often a big conversation that a lot of people have, where I used to hear people walk in and go, oh, I prefer in the game stuff because when I buy a box of cards, there's 5 hits in a box. I buy Upper Deck, there's only 1 hit. Now, that's plain and simple licensing fees, as you well know, Jeremy. There's an absorbent amount of money paid to both the NHL and the NHLPA, and obviously NFL, NFLPA, if you want to go in all the leagues, if you want to branch out that way. But there's a heavy price to be paid to have that license to put those logos and those player names and everything on these cards. So that's the reason. But that's kind of why I switched gears a little bit. I'm still, I work with Upper Deck very closely. So I like what they do. I like what they represent. I like how they put out their cards and what they have. But I see the market for some of this unlicensed stuff. I understand people's joy over it. The companies are able to deliver more, obviously, because they don't have to pay the heavy fees in terms of licensing and all that kind of stuff. And there is some excitement to people getting some of these cards that you probably would not see in an Upper Deck product. So I completely understand it. Like I said, there seems to be a space in the market for everything. It doesn't matter what it is, and I'll just bring everything. There's pickleball cards. Yeah. If someone would have asked me 10 years ago, would somebody put out pickleball cards? I would have said no. I can't imagine anybody doing it. Yeah. There's pickleball cards. So there's room for everything, and I believe that there is room for those products.
Yeah. Okay. And I like that you're admitting that you've changed your tune on it over the years. That to me shows that you're not stubborn. You're willing to adapt and to embrace some change to the extent that you agree with it. And I think that's great. I wanted to ask you now. I'm on Instagram a lot, and you see LCS owners from the United States on there doing things, but nobody's embraced Instagram that I'm aware of like Rob Veras has from Burbank Sports Cards in Burbank, California. And when I talked to you about having you on, I started thinking to myself, it's like Wayne is because Rob Veras is revered in this as an LCS owner. He's well respected. And I kind of thought, Wayne's kind of like Canada's version of Rob Veras, but without the, you don't have a card father moniker that you've given yourself. You're not as out there as he is on the social media, but you are still as respected, I believe, within in the community. My question is, do you know Rob? And tell us a little bit about the relationship if you do.
Well, am I blushing again, Jeremy? Thank you again for the kind words. It's very humbling to have you say stuff like that. So it is very appreciated.
And Wayne, I'm only saying it. I'm not saying this to compliment you as much as I just want the audience who may not know you, may not have heard of Wayne Sports Cards, to understand that Wayne isn't on because he's any old LCS owner. Wayne's on Wayne's on with us for specific reasons, and I just want to make that known. But please, back to you.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I've known Rob forever, or it seems like forever. I think I met Rob back in 1998. And great dude. We used to communicate. I'm going to say we'd talk at least once or twice a year, and definitely once, because we'd always meet at a conference and we'd have a good chats and sit by the pool and share a few drinks and have some conversations. And for the most part, we always saw eye to eye. We kind of had the same ideas in mind. I couldn't help but emulate a lot of what he did too. I was completely enamored when he had his binder system where, and this is quite a few years ago, where everything was done by year, alphabetized, and I completely adapted that. It was just, to me, it seemed so easy where someone would call up and they'd say, hey, do you have a 1998-99 Upper Deck Finite? And they'd give me the card and I go, let me grab the binder, and there's the binder and there's the card. So, I completely fell in love with that idea. So yeah, I used to talk to Rob quite a bit. And he is, let's face it, he is cornered his section of the market of what he does with the singles. I don't know if there's anybody even close. He's found that niche in the marketplace and just consumed anything that's gone along with it, and ran with it. So good on him. But fun dude to talk with. And I think I haven't talked to him. Maybe this is due for another phone call. I might have to reach out, but I haven't talked to him for probably a year and a half now. So probably the time to reach out and say hey and chat. But a great guy, knows what he's doing, and very known in the hobby for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, are you yourself? I mean, you are a collector. You've told us you're a collector. You have all the O-Pee-Chee sets. Now's the time. I'd like to see. I think we'd like to see a few cards from your personal collection, 4 or 5 maybe that you pulled out. I did say this might happen. So, do you have a few cards you could show us besides the Vezina, which your 1911 C55, beautiful, looked like a beautiful George Vezina? Do you have anything else you can show us?
Yeah, and for me, it's not always about, and I guess that's where it comes from, Jeremy. For me, it's not always about the money. I really enjoy collecting. And as you mentioned, I've collected since I was 4 years old. And I say that honestly. A lot of people say, oh, I've been collecting since I was 11, or I've been collecting since I was 19. I honestly, as soon as I got those cards from my dad, I fell in love. I thought, this is so cool. And I remember taking these cards, and when a game was on, I'd sit there and I'd lay these cards on the floor, and Guy Lafleur would score a goal. So I'd hold up his card and show it to Dad and say, hey, look, Guy Lafleur just scored. So I fell in love with hockey cards and started collecting back, like I said, when I was 4 years old. And ever since then, both comics and cards have been a huge, huge passion of mine. I've really enjoyed doing it. And for me, it's not necessarily the high valued cards. It's more the story and sometimes the uniqueness behind the cards. So, being a Shane Doan fan, so enjoyed putting that together. So I don't know if I've got it in the right order here, but that's by the letter, the 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 4 of 4 actual letters off of Doan's jersey. And it's feats like that. Again, they're not extremely high valued cards, but just taking on a challenge like that. I remember when I picked up the first one or first two, I was elated. I think I had I think it was the O and the N, and I thought, hey, look, this is really cool. I have 2 of the only 4 cards out there. This is really, really unique. So I enjoyed having those 2. And then, a customer, a good friend of mine, who I've known for a while, a fellow by the name of Steve Angel, who I'm sure you know, led me on to the A. So I had the O, A, N. And then I got led on to the D, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. I'm actually going to build this thing. And the cool thing was, this is the uniqueness of the collecting world. When people know, and there are some really good people, when they know that you need something and have something, a lot of people will not, hold you over the barrel and say, hey, I know this card, you need it. I'm going to grease you for it. They're really good with it. And when this person found out that they had the D and it was the last letter I needed, and I was very open about that, they were great about making sure that it got into my hands because it completed my collection. So it's cards like that. In the same thing, I managed to track down the 101 out of the cup. So I managed to get that one because I was led onto that card. So it's just, yeah, absolutely.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. Just want to
catch the one.
That's amazing. 0506, the cup, the first year, the 1 of 1 base auto patch parallel. I love it, Wayne. I love it.
Yes. So again, the cool thing about that card was that card actually passed through my hand because that was one of the cards that I actually had Shane Doan sign for Upper Deck when I was doing the signing. So any of those cup cards from 0506, all those cards passed through my hands. So when I knew that I did that and I had met Shane Doan, I made it kind of a mission to track down as many of those 056 cup cards as I possibly could.
Okay. I got to show you something that I did that is, and this, please don't take this as me trying to one up you, but this is more like a 2.25ing upping you, because I believe there's 11 letters in Dale Howardchuk, and I got them all right here from the cup. And I'll tell you, finding that last one, I thought I never would. And then it pops up one day on eBay. It was the C right here, finally showed up, and I put this set to bed. So really cool to see Doan, because I got to tell you, if there's one other name I could have from these, by the letter or whatever they're called sets, it would probably be Doan. So I also see, Wayne, that you're hoarding Doan nameplates. You've got one hanging behind you. You've got one on the table there. If you're ever willing to sell that, please look me up. I will be a happy buyer, but I'm just messing. Mitch Grotman says Wayne doesn't need the 0506 Cup 1 of 1. I think you should get rid of it. It's a sticker. He doesn't really want it. Mitch loves to collect those 1-of-1s. So that's why he's kind of joking around with you. But yeah, I love seeing that, Wayne, because you know what? You're consistent with who you're a fan of. You're collecting for the stories more than, say, the value. I do that too, but I collect for many reasons. I think a lot of us do. Do you have any? I mean, you showed your Vezina. It's a great card. Do you have any cards in your personal collection that you consider investments?
Yeah. I think anybody would tell you that, especially where early on when people collected and I collected back in the 70s. Back then, there was no such thing as an investment. You collected because it was just fun. Building a set, putting the cards together, having fun. As the collecting market changed, and I will say, obviously, it was late 80s when we started to see shows happen and, obviously pushing the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie and then the hockey card market. That changed everything. We saw things change where it was no longer just a collecting game. It was now a investment game. And whether or not, and it doesn't matter, I can flip it both ways. Whether you're just an investor, I guarantee you there are people that have cards that say I'm an investor, but they have cards that mean a lot to them, that it would take a lot to pry out of their hands, even though they are quote unquote an investor. And flip it the other way, where I really am a collector. I enjoy what I do. I still have fun what I do, and it's 50 years later. But there are cards that I've looked at that, that would be a great card to buy because I know it's an investment card. So yeah, I do own Bobby Orr rookies that are graded. I do own Gordie Howe rookies that are graded. And the sad part about all that, but it's again the world we live in, is I don't get a chance to enjoy those on a regular basis because those are in a safety deposit box. And most people who have cards like that, that's exactly what they do. I talked to many collectors. Again, as ironic as we're discussing this, I just had one in the store and he's bought some big time cards off me. And he had just come from his safety deposit box because he was looking at a card. I was asking if he had actually bought it off me because someone was asking me. And he said, no, it wasn't him. But he was at his safety deposit box. And I always look at this, go, how crazy is this? We buy all these great cards and unique cards that we want to look at and enjoy, and you have to go to a safety deposit box to enjoy it. It's really, really sad. But yeah, I do have a lot of stuff that I've done for investment purposes and taken a gamble on a few rookies that, you look at and say, hey, this is potential for sure.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you have, Jeremy.
Yeah, for sure. I have cards that are certainly investment grade, but I collect them and I love them. And I don't like not being able to see them as often as I'd like to. But that's what you have to do when you have things of value. That's just the way it goes, I suppose. So you showed your Shane Doan, the 4 letters. I showed Howard Chuck his 9 letters, still only 25 cents. As I might have to consider collecting Aho. It's only, that might be I don't know. Are there any 2-letter last names then in the NHL? Maybe not that I can think of. And CC here says the Doan 1-of-1 cup card is great, but the story is even better. Awesome card. And I agree. The fact that went through your hands, that you had it out, you had it autographed, and then it makes its way back to you. It's like, I don't know if you know, Wayne, in 2009, I went to the Upper Deck pack-out facility for the cup, and I photographed all the patch cards from that set. And so I now know that any patch card from the 08-09, the cup set, which is the Stamkos rookie year, as I'm sure you know, has gone through my hands. And it's not many people can say that they've had like cards go through their hands before they were packed out. So that's a pretty cool thing.
You've got me very envious of that. And I think I'm okay to share this too, Jeremy. I was actually asked by Upper Deck to go to an Upper Deck pack out for the cup. And I was, obviously completely honored to be asked to help them with that, obviously knowing values of cards, because obviously when they're packing these things, you have to value these things out and make sure there's the case hits and everything else. But both myself and Upper Deck came to a very quick decision on that. I think it was almost simultaneous, where I basically said to them, I don't know if this is a good idea. That would be really, really bad if something happened and all of those cards or some of those cards or one of those cards made its way into our shop in one of those tins or a big hit. And I remember having the discussion going, guys, as much as I'm completely honored to be asked to do something like that, I don't think it's quite the right thing to do. I think we should just call it a day, and you guys do what you got to do. So love the story, and you have me very envious now of you being able to do that.
Well, that takes some real foresight by you to think that far ahead. That's some straight up integrity right there too. So yeah, respect, man. That I'm glad I didn't own a card shop, so I didn't have that potential conflict. But boy, oh boy, you would have. I'll tell you what, it was it was 4 grueling days. It's grueling, don't get me wrong, and it was 4 of them, but what an experience, something I'll never forget. And I feel very lucky that I was able to experience that. Okay, we're gonna do the Mint Inc. $50 gift card giveaway right now, you guys. So I'm going to share my screen here, and you guys I'm going to ask everybody, once you don't know what you're going to have to put in. You're going to put a hashtag and exactly what you see on the screen. I'm going to give it like 1 minute. So you got to be on the ball here. Hopefully you're current. You're not behind on the show. One person's going to win. If you've won before and there's 2 of you, CC and Lapper, you're ineligible. So please don't enter. Everyone else is eligible. I'm going to put it on the screen right now. Here we go. Hashtag mintink1. Get that in the comments. We're going to give it literally like a minute or so. We're going to give this away, and I will be in contact with the winner, and we will get you a code for mintink.ca. Get your entries in right now, you guys, and we will run the randomization here in about a minute. Wayne, while we're waiting for some entries to come in, my last question for you really is, and this is a good way to wrap up the show, I think, is, what are you seeing in the industry that encourages you, and what are you seeing in the industry that discourages you? And I'm sorry if I'm causing you to rack your brain right now, because we talked about a lot of issues already. So if there's nothing left, that's fine. Just say, you know what, Jeremy, I think I've covered it. If that's where we're at, that's fine. But, and I'm now dragging this question along to give you time to rack your brain. But does anything come to mind when I ask you, what are you seeing that encourages you? What are you seeing that discourages you?
I'm going to answer that in a very positive note, Jeremy. We all have our days. There are days that I get very frustrated with what goes on, or something that happened, or things I hear, and I'll bring the scanning of packs. That was brought to my attention. I'm like, seriously, now we got to deal with this. So there are some very discouraging things that we hear about that, you just want to just throw your hands in the air and go, why? What am I doing? I've been doing this for 35 years, but I really do enjoy this. And I'm going to take it, just another quick story here. A lot of times when I go golfing with people, people I know obviously know what I do, but a lot of people I don't. I'll be introduced. They say, oh, Wayne owns Wayne Sports Cards. And for the next 18 holes, I'm answering questions on cards and memorabilia and everything else. And at the end of the round, guys like, I am so sorry. Like, I talked your ear off about, and I'm like, look, I would have shut you down. I'm not afraid to tell you that I don't want to talk about this anymore. I love talking the hobby. I could talk for hours. We've talked, I don't even know what time it is, but however long we've talked, I've loved this. I enjoy talking the hobby, and I love doing what I do. So at the end of the day, I'm going to try to take a very positive spin on this. The nice thing with this industry, barring some of the things that we discussed that I can't control, for the most part, I can control what happens inside my 4 walls. That is for me to do, and for me to control, and for me to take care of. So any outside problems, barring, like I said, somebody saying you can no longer sell hockey cards, we're taking that away from you. even at that point, I can still control what goes on in my shop. And I'm going to try to make every time someone walks in our store a very positive experience and a fun experience. And this is where I'm going to pass it along to the staff, because a lot of times I get hung up with placing orders and in my shop and phone calls and doing this and doing that. My sister, Corey, my wife, Nikki, Clarence and Daryl, even customers that will once in a while pop behind the counter and help, they have a blast entertaining people, having fun. I hear so many comments of your wife is great, your sister's great. I can't believe you ran on to Clarence. How did you find Ty? They've inspired me to be a little more on the ball, a little more positive, a little more upbeat because of how energetic they are. So again, you learn through life experiences. I don't want to sound all philosophical. I'm kind of going on a tangent here, Jeremy, but it's just so much fun to do what I do. So having a fun spin on it, I'm just going to say that as the industry continues to evolve, I'm going to continue to try to adapt and do what I do or know that I have to do to continue selling trading cards in this industry.
Yeah, I love it, man. I mean, that's the best attitude to have, is one of excitement and, being positive about the future. If you weren't, get out. Just like we talked about earlier, if all you're doing is griping about the hobby, maybe it's time to leave. If the same thing goes for an owner of a shop, if you're seeing the positive, you're still enjoying what you're doing, it's a great attitude. I think that's why you're a great ambassador for the hobby. I'm going to get back here, guys. We have over 60 watching on YouTube. We got about 30 on Twitter. Only 21 entries, so I'm running it right now. I'm going to run it right now, and hopefully somebody wins this. Let's see. There we go. Here we go. And the winner is Edmonton Boy 77. I couldn't make that up. Edmonton Boy 77 from Edmonton is going to win the $50 gift card to Mint Inc. Please, Edmonton Boy, I think I'm almost sure I know who you are, but send me a DM or an email, and I'll get you the code. Congratulations on the win. Yeah, there you go. You are welcome. Hello to the Essential Credentials podcast. I'm guessing that is Matt. Good to see you, but if not, yeah, it's Pete. I thought it was Pete. Edmonton Boy. There you go. Edmonton Boy wins the Mint Inc. Credit, which we're doing every week through the end of the year here on Sports Cards Live. Wayne, listen, I feel like we could keep on talking, but I'm looking at my notes, and we got through pretty much everything on here. One way or another, we got through everything on here. So I'm just going to, ask you, is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Anything else you find interesting or going on that you'd like to share?
Not really. I like to just make sure that people understand that this is a hobby. And at the end of the day, try to have fun doing it. We're all spending our hard-earned dollars. I spend my hard-earned dollars buying the product to bring in the shop. People are spending their hard-earned dollars to purchase the product. Try to enjoy it. And I'm not speaking because it's not a ton of people that, kind of tar and feather it and say, oh, if you're busting a box, you're only getting this much value in it. I can't understand people busting boxes. If you collect because you're enjoying what you're doing, and Jeremy, the routine. I mean, you've been in this so long yourself, the fun that you can have by just enjoying it rather than being so concerned with what you're spending. And that's all I keep, and I keep going on. And I guess maybe this comes with age. I'll say this with age, where the older I get, you kind of want to make sure that people are having fun rather than just being so concerned with, one tangent of the industry. But that's the only thing I can say. It's so much fun. For 35 years, we've had the shop. I've been involved in the industry for it's either 38 or 40 years doing different things, setting up shows, working within the industry. There's some aspects of it that I have cringed, that I haven't liked that's gone on. But at the end of the day, 35 years later, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't enjoyable. It's been fun. It's been a lot, meeting people like yourself and other people. It's a blast, absolute blast. It's a great community.
It's a great industry to be in. The hobby the hobby is an industry, for better or for worse. And it's a great hobby to be in. It's a great industry to be in. If you do it professionally, if you do it for income, I couldn't agree with you more. We're very lucky that we found this thing, at an early age, and it's been. That's why the song says sports cards is a lifestyle. It's for you, it's a lifestyle. For me, it's a lifestyle. We have that same lifestyle. I think it's just awesome. We obviously have different. We play different parts in the same hobby, and we love it. So that's great. I'm going to read off a few final comments. I want to thank everybody for joining. I want to thank you, Wayne. We'll have you back eventually once there's more new things to talk about, because you do provide a great perspective, great history in the hobby, a positive outlook. Of course, I and everyone watching and listening are appreciative of that. Quick question came in for you. YK, do you sell singles online?
No. They evolve so fast or move so fast, we just can't keep up. We've got a website, we do a bunch of other stuff, and it's just really difficult to maintain the singles level. As I mentioned before, you throw a single in a display case, it lasts all of 30 seconds. By the time I've taken the time to list that online, I've wasted my time. So no, we do not carry singles online.
Mark Santucci wants to know, have you ever been to an Edmonton Oiler game when they were in the WHA or just the NHL?
Both. So our family had season seats for the Edmonton Oilers since 1972-73. I've actually got the certificate that says, congratulations, you're one of the original seat holders for the Edmonton Oilers 72-73 season. So yeah, I saw my share of WHA games. One of my favorite jerseys is actually from the WHA Cincinnati Stingers. I absolutely loved that jersey when I was a kid. It almost made me flip to cheer for them rather than the Edmonton Oilers.
Nice. Jeff McMahon says, a great episode and safe travels to Fanatics show. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that coming from a great loyal viewer like yourself. Mark Santucci, thank you for the comment. Says it's a great show. He says, Jeremy will be at the East Coast National. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the East Coast National, but I will be at Fanatics, Mark, and still only 25 cents. Says, great conversation, great show. Thank you, Jeremy and Wayne. I'm in the States, but will purchase online from Wayne if the opportunity presents itself. Much respect. Thank you for that. Still only 25 cents. I always wonder, Wayne, when I call out these people's names, when the podcast listeners listen to the show, and I have to call out some of these names, like still only 25 cents says. There's worse ones than that. Trust me, that's not a bad one. There's someone I have to call toilet on the show here very often. Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate that very much. Pete wants to know, when will Wayne go to the Sport Card Expo in Toronto? Have you been recently, or has it been a while for you, Wayne?
I have not been recently, and it is a show that I do need to get to. And I think Ty, my breaker, is almost twisting my arm here to get us to make an appearance for numerous reasons. But yeah, I find it just difficult because a lot of times it's always it's around a product release. Notoriously it was around Upper Deck Series 1, and I just can't be away from the shop on Upper Deck Series 1. It is such a crazy time in the store. The last X amount of years, it's lineups to get in to buy the cases and the boxes. So for me to be away just isn't fair to the shop and fair to the customers. So it's been difficult, but I'm going to try to make a little bit more of an effort. If not to get out there to do what we do, just to get out there to say hi to people and again, see you, Jeremy, in a different setting rather than just you popping in the shop or talking to you online.
I'll definitely have a booth when you make it down there. So come say hello. We'll take a selfie and we'll move on from there. Essential Credentials, thank you for being here, for what you do for the hobby. Stukes, appreciate you as always. All Elite, thank you for being here. Richie Rocket, good to see you. And still only 25 cents. As Wayne said, he likes comics. He should get the screen name reference. Real name is Mark. Okay, Mark. Thank you. And yes, it's a great name. Just awkward for me to say over and over again, but I do enjoy it. Pete says, great show tonight. Thank you, Jerry Petrie. Good to see you, buddy. All right, Wayne, again, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining. I want to thank you guys for your engagement, for welcoming Wayne to our Sports Cards Live community here tonight, for all your comments and questions. Wayne, thank you. Final words to you, and then this show will be over.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all the comments as well, guys. Very much appreciated. Jeremy, fantastic show. I've enjoyed watching the episodes that I watch that you do. You do a fantastic job of them. Keep up the great work, and it was an absolute honor to be on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wayne. Guys, hope you enjoyed this one. I'll be back tomorrow night for the Fanatics Collect weekly hockey auction ending watch party with Josh Madigan from the Hockey Cards Gong Show. No episodes next week, as I will be at Fanatics Fest in New York. And please remember that this podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow and subscribe for free. Leave a rating or review. Greatly appreciate it, guys. With that, this episode of Sports Cards Live for August the 10th, 2024 is now over.